Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be looking into something you probably don't think about every day, the use of antibiotics,
Hmm.
but not in the way you might immediately think. We're going beyond doctors' offices and livestock.
Right.
We're diving into the world of plants,
Yeah.
antibiotics in agriculture and horticulture. So this means fruits, vegetables, all those good things we eat, right?
That's exactly right. It might not be a topic that you see in the headlines every day,
Right.
but when you consider just how much food we grow and consume, it becomes clear that this is a pretty important area to understand.
Right. Okay, so to kick things off, I've been digging into a bunch of sources on this, and it seems like the main reason antibiotics are used in agriculture is, well, it's kind of straightforward. It's to fight off bacterial diseases,
Yeah.
the kind that can really decimate entire crops.
Yeah.
We're talking bacteria specifically, not viruses or fungi.
Uh-huh.
This is like bacteria on bacteria warfare.
Right. Precisely. I
Yeah.
mean, take fire blight, for example. Okay. Yeah. This is a disease that affects apple trees, pear trees,
Mm-hmm.
and it's caused by a specific type of bacteria called Erwinia amylovora.
Erwinia amylovora, got it.
Now, to control this blight, farmers have turned to antibiotics like streptomycin,
Okay,
which is an aminoglycoside,
an aminoglycoside, okay.
and oxytetracycline,
Okay.
which is a tetracycline.
Mm-hmm.
And these are often sprayed on the trees, especially when they're in full bloom.
Right, right. But here's the thing, and this is something that I think is particularly interesting, is that just like with us humans, bacteria can develop resistance to antibiotics.
Oh, I was different.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
It makes those treatments useless over time.
Hmm.
And then there's, of course, the environmental question, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, spraying these potent substances, it begs the question, what impact does that have on the environment around those crops?
Absolutely. And the whole issue of resistance is a big one.
Yeah.
And then you've also got another example, citrus greening, sometimes called Huanglongbing, or HLB for short.
OHLB.
And this is a really devastating disease that affects citrus trees.
Mhm.
And it's caused by a bacterium called Candidatus liberobacter.
Wow. Okay.
Now, in some regions, farmers have tried treating this by injecting streptomycin and oxytetracycline directly into the trunks of the trees.
Huh. So injecting it, that's different from spraying it on the leaves and the flowers.
Yeah, it is a completely different approach.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's still a lot of debate about how effective this method is in the long run
Yeah.
and what the environmental impact might be.
Right, because you're injecting it right into the tree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it just highlights that there's no one-size-fits-all solution here.
absolutely.
And our research also mentions that there are other cases, where antibiotics are used more sparingly for other bacterial diseases like spots on leaves or blights or wilts.
Yeah.
It's not just those two examples.
Uh-huh. It's really interesting because they're not just used out in the field. Antibiotics also play a role in something called plant tissue culture.
Okay. Plant tissue culture, what's that?
Well, this is basically, you have these sterile lab environments
Okay.
where scientists are growing plant cells,
Mm-hmm.
and they sometimes add antibiotics to the growth media to prevent bacteria from contaminating the cultures.
Huh. That makes sense.
But it's very, very precise.
Right.
You have to get the amount and the type of antibiotic just right. Otherwise, you can actually end up harming the plant tissue.
So too much is a bad thing.
Yeah, too much is definitely a bad thing. You don't want to do that. We call it phytotoxicity.
Phytotoxicity, got it. All right. So we've talked about how antibiotics are used, but let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay?
Antibiotic resistance it's a growing concern for all of us, right?
Yes.
I mean, we hear about it all the time in human and animal health, but it's also a really big deal when it comes to using antibiotics in agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the concern is that resistance could develop in those bacteria out in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then those resistant bacteria could potentially jump to other bacteria that could infect humans or animals.
That's right. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
These microbes are all part of, the same world.
And they can share genes, that's scary.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not just resistance, right? I mean, there's also the issue of these antibiotics persisting in the soil.
Oh, yeah.
And the water, what happens to them? How
Yeah.
long do they stay there? What effects do they have on, the broader ecosystem?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of regulatory bodies around the world starting to restrict
Right.
or even ban the use of certain antibiotics in agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
particularly those antibiotics that are considered really important for human medicine.
They don't want to mess around with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really, really carefully evaluating the risks and benefits.
Right, right. So that begs the question, if we're trying to limit the use of antibiotics, what are the alternatives?
Well, that's where something called integrated pest management comes in, or IPM.
IPM, okay.
And this is all about using a combination of different strategies. So, for example, you might choose plant varieties that are naturally resistant to those diseases.
Okay.
Breed them to be stronger.
Right.
Or you could introduce beneficial organisms that can actually fight those harmful bacteria. That's what we call biological control.
Okay, like a natural predator.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And then there are things like, making sure your farming practices are really good, improving the soil health,
Right.
and even using some older methods like copper-based compounds, which have been used for a long time to control bacterial diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about, looking at all these different sustainable solutions.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Okay. So to kind of wrap things up, it seems like while antibiotics do have a place in agriculture, protecting our food from bacterial diseases and also in those specialized lab settings, it's a very carefully controlled practice
Yeah.
and increasingly restricted because of that public health risk of antibiotic resistance.
That's right. I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
It's not, widespread. It's not unchecked. There are very specific applications, but those risks, especially the risk of antibiotic resistance, are leading to more regulations and a real push towards those alternative methods.
Right, right. So it's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Between protecting our food and protecting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. Given this balancing act, this need to protect our food supply, but also safeguard public health from the threat of antibiotic resistance, what role do you think we as consumers and as policymakers should play in shaping how antibiotics are used in agriculture moving forward?
Yeah.
It's a big question. It's a complex issue, and it has implications for all of us. So thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you next time.